Hi everyone, thank you for coming to my Vulnerably Badass YouTube channel. Today I want to talk about this book I read or listened to on Audible. History of the World in 6 Glasses. So first of all, I didn't like history that much when I was younger. When I was in middle school or high school, history was so boring, and I never was so into learning history, except for when I took US history from Black perspective when I was in college. But of course, I had to study in middle school, high school. High school, I didn't really study much, but middle school. And so I have some keywords in my head, but the things doesn't really connect, or I don't know much. And because I'm doing my work intercultural training, history of Korea or history of Japan, I know, but not so much of world history. I know the major events and stuff, but I don't know the bigger flow. And so anyway, in my whole life, my identity was like, I'm not good at history, or I don't know much history. But I think after I read Sapiens, I think Sapiens was so interesting. Of course, I listened to it on audiobook, so it's not like I read. I was just listening when I was walking, so some of the concepts came in, but some of the concepts it was hard. But overall, I enjoyed it as an entertainment. And I don't know what made it so interesting, but I think newer perspective than just remembering the historical facts. Because I think in Japan, or maybe it's limited to when I got history classes, it's so much of just kind of like a story, or just remembering when the events happened, who did what. But yeah, it's kind of like a perspective taking was kind of interesting, I think, from Sapiens. And I don't know, when I found out about this book on Blinkist, I think I was fascinated. Wow, the concept, a history of the world in 6 glasses. 6 glasses talking about first beer, wine, and spirits, coffee, tea, and Coca-Cola. And I was like, wow, like drinks are so relatable, easier to kind of imagine and understand. And history is something hard for me. So these two things are connected, like history, you usually talk about these heroes, politicians, and events, and revolution, kind of like too hard for me. But these drinks, sound interesting. So I listened to Blinkist, Blinks, and it was interesting. So I borrowed the audiobook from the library and listened, and it was great. So I want to share what I thought about it. So first, it started from beer, because beer was the I guess oldest, and then it was from the ancient Mesopotamian or ancient Egypt era. And because I'm not that interested, I'll just listen to the beer part. And wine part too, it was talking about ancient Greece and Rome, and I remember watching Netflix, Roman Empire, and then back then, like, they were drinking beer, so drinking wine, so I associate wine with Greece and Rome. So it was just kind of like, for me, informative information. Yeah. And then the third one was spirits, and something that I didn't know about was this spirit making, hard liquor making culture was the era of kind of, what is that, exploration. And so it's connected to Europe and Africa and America. And when the book talk about rum, and it was kind of as a result or byproduct or related to colonialism and slavery, I was like, oh wow, and it was kind of shocking for me. I mean, it wasn't like a eye-opening, or I never really connected them together. But the stereotypical, image of rum is in the Caribbean area. So I was thinking, oh, so that's how it relates, the drink and the background. So that was like a little bit of, not aha, but like, oh, surprise, the connection, like new synapses. Yes. And the most, I think, interesting thing was when they were talking about coffee. It was saying something like coffee was the drink for like scientists or intellectuals who weren't interested in drinking wine from the morning or lunch, back then, because a lot of people drank these, wine or alcohol because water wasn't clean, and it's better to drink wine. But then coffee, like, so some people didn't want to get drunk or drink alcohol, and those people were intellectual and scientists, so they started drinking coffee, and the coffee houses became the place for these people to hang out. And that was like, for me, like, again, like new synapses. Oh, like that's why, my life in US, mostly 9 years I spent as international students, and I know how college life is so deeply connected with coffee houses, cafes, and always in the office there is coffee, and professors drinking coffee and discussing things over coffee everywhere. And if I go to conference, coffee. So I just took it as granted or normal. But yeah, like now I can see better how it comes from. Of course, it's not just 100% all the reason for this, but history affects what's happening now. So just finding that connection was really interesting. So coffee was like, I was like, oh, really? And another thing was, another drink was tea. It was, again, surprising or aha or synapses moment was, tea is so connected to British history and the Opium War and Boston Tea Party in the States. And I was amazed how, tea in the modern sense, it's a little bit minor than coffee, and like tea bag, kind of healthier or image, but the history of like how people wanted to have tea. So how like wars started or how people fought with each other was kind of amazing. But I guess that's same as when I read about spices, how people were fighting over spices, in middle school. When I learned about that, in my middle school, in the textbook in Japan, it was spices weren't really, I guess, the word, but we learned, or at least I remember, that I was told like these wars or conflicts were happening over peppers. And I was like, the peppers that we have, like salt and pepper, like what is that? But that's modern society, right? Back then the values were so different, and how precious they were is so different. So thinking about the tea too, tea has really dark history. I mean, anything could have dark history, but I was surprised to really learn about this Opium War and Boston Tea Party. Yeah, it was interesting to me, and not in the sense it's fun, but to learn the connection. And also Coca-Cola. So how Coca-Cola was invented and expanded and everything, but the book talked about the relationship, the connection with World War II. And that one too, like, again, wow, like synapses and like, oh, it's so fascinating, interesting, amazing to connect the drinks and the historical context and how the drink affected the history, or how the historical context affected the drink is, I can't think of any word, but just interesting. So that's why I enjoy the book. And I'm sorry, like, to people who are listening to this, like, so what's the point, or what's the more detailed information? I'm just sharing which topic vaguely, affected me or enjoyed. And so maybe it's not really helping you to understand the book itself. It's not a book review or anything. But if you're interested in knowing background of these drinks, different types of beverages, and also, learning the historical context, I really recommend it. It's a really enjoyable book for someone who doesn't really like hard history like me. So please, if you're interested, please read or listen to the book and let me know what you think. So my question today is, I think, out of these 6 drinks and the historical context, which one sounded most interesting to you? And which one would you like to read first if you get this book? Thank you for coming to my YouTube channel. See you next time.